My name is Pete Tseronis, and I am the CEO and founder of Dots and Bridges. I am also the former CTO, Chief Technology Officer, also known as Connective Tissue Officer for two cabinet-level agencies. I served 25 years in government, and I had the time of my life. It was an incredible journey, and well, for the past 5 years, I've transferred that passion into a sort of quasi role of getting to know who a lot of the influencers are in government, the change agents and thought leaders, and bringing their story into light and humanizing a bit of those individual journeys. I am honored today to have my colleague and friend, the Chief Software Officer, Nick Chaillan at the United States Air Force. But more importantly, titles aside, this gentleman's journey is truly inspirational, and we're going to dive into that a bit. I'm going to do my best here, Nick, to give a little background on you as a highly qualified expert, the Air Force software officer, but you need to have a little security in that
They
title.
love security.
Yes, there you go, buddy. You are the co-lead for the Department of Defense Enterprise DevSecOps initiative with the Department of Defense Chief Information Officer. You've been doing that, it appears, for 2 years plus and some months. You've been in your current role as Air Force Chief Software Officer for 1 year and 7 months.
Yep.
The Chief Software Officer works within the program executive office officers, and is responsible for analyzing current software and cloud migration plans. Nick evaluates and authorizes new commercially viable off-the-shelf software and cloud-related technologies. This guy's a resident expert. He does his due diligence. Cyber.gov is one of his monumental hallmark efforts. But I think the story, Nick, that I'd like to get to for our audience is prior to all of that. Your journey to the federal government by way of France at 15 years of age, where you really tapped into that entrepreneurial spirit, if not earlier. You founded 12 companies. You're one of France's youngest entrepreneurs, and the federal government now is better for having you in its tapestry of wisdom, as I like to think about. And your mission, while at the Air Force, really throughout government, if you will, is one to help educate, enlighten, and I think in some way inform society as to how software, DevSecOps, however we dive into it, really is benefiting, that humanity component. And we'd like to get into that. So what did I not mention, Nick, at the outset that I think you'd like to share as sort of defining moments in your journey?
No, you did a great job. I think, the funny piece that I always have a good time talking about is you have to look at the faces of people when they saw me first in the Pentagon, with my French accent. That was always very interesting. So even today, after 2 years, it's still, you can tell people are checking if I'm supposed to be here or not. That's kind of fun.
Well, you're a well-known individual. I think folks who are watching this know Nick as aligned quite often with the DevSecOps movement, with security software stacks. You talk a lot about the culture of and failing fast. And I think I'd like to jump into that and make that a theme of today, because technology aside, it's obvious you're a thought leader and one who folks go to, and I'm sure companies, when they come and have an opportunity to speak with you, you're also one who knows how to help convey a message, to socialize. It's not so much about the capability, it's how it benefits the agency, the mission. And I hear that a lot in your talks. So first question I'm going to throw at you is, what is it about working in the federal government, having been an entrepreneur, having done well in life, if you will, financially and just spiritually, whatever it is, what do you find most enjoyable and love about working in the United States federal government?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, because when I started, really my main goal was to make a difference. And honestly, looking back, I've been now, I guess, 4 years between DHS and DoD, trying to make a difference in the government at various level of success. I think DHS was right in between the transitions. It was very difficult to get things done. I think I've been a little bit more successful and empowered too on the DoD side. But really, if I take a step back and I compare my, 19 years as entrepreneur, I think the feedback I'm getting and the impact I'm making has been multiplied by a million. The stress level, funny enough, even though you have a lot of people and payroll, and you have to worry about all these people now depend on you to pay their mortgages and rent, and you start that at 15 and you have to wait, you have to pay these people. You can't mess up, right? If you miss payroll, you're in trouble. Even when you grow, and the bigger you grow, the more problems you end up having as an entrepreneur, particularly when you're in 12 countries with different jurisdictions, legal issues, and so on. And for me, looking back, I can tell you of all the cool tech I built and somehow used, by millions of people. I mean, I managed to partner with a lot of Fortune 500. So a lot of the stuff we ended up doing has been used by a lot of people, millions of people, but never really the piece of software we built was game changing, I would call it. And I can tell you what we're doing now, particularly since when I started, I had no kids, and now I have 3 kids. I can tell you, I have not, I didn't realize first that, to make sure that my kids and your kids and our kids will be able to compete and have the same life and freedom that we enjoy, that the stuff we're doing now will be the only chance they have at competing in 10, 20 years. Because if we keep getting behind, and that's where the timeliness component of DevSecOps and what we do in moving faster, better, fail fast, don't fail twice for the same reason, learn fast, empower innovation, that is the difference between them being successful 20 years from now at competing in a worldwide economy with other nation states that have 5 to 6 times more people, and they have the luxury of volume, but we need the luxury of being small and moving fast, right? That's really what I've been very excited about.
So you hit on a couple themes, and one that resonates with me is the tenets of open government: being collaborative, being participatory, being transparent. And this is where I feel, having worked and walked in your shoes for a bit, 25 years, but the collaboration opportunity that isn't just handed over, it's cultivated, it's fostered with industry, government,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of the day, we talked about this earlier this morning, the impact on society. Whether that's in the United States or worldwide, the world's digitally connected. Pivoting to DevSecOps and it being technically, what does that really mean to me? Can you speak to what you feel in your passion for, whether it's software development, serving as the Air Force Chief Software Officer? Can you use an exemplar or two of how DevSecOps is actually accelerating that workforce development, creating one that's a 21st century workforce, and just tie in those tenets of what IT modernization is all about, and maybe shed some light for the Joe and Joanne 6-packs of the world as to why this really matters to our world.
Yeah, when you look at the pace of software today on the commercial side, and you look at companies like Netflix or Amazon or Microsoft, they're able to try things out with a subset of their users, try new features, get rapid feedback loops with their development team so they can try things out multiple times a day, do thousands of releases of software a day. We don't even see it because it's small, tiny changes that they continuously improve. And so software becomes kind of this continuous improvement capability. And when you have that rapid feedback loop, instead of doing big, massive release of software once a year or 5 years or whatever we used to do, now you can have an accelerated feedback loop and know that you're not going to waste time on features that are not getting any traction from your actual end user. Not in a lab, not in a fake environment, in a real production grade deployed capability. And that's that rapid feedback loop that is really game changing. And for us in DoD, we saved in 1 year 100 years of planned time just in 1 year.
So let's talk about that rapid feedback loop. We hear that, fail fast. Governments are given that authority to go make change. It takes leadership, and obviously you exemplify that. Can you talk about some of the challenges, though, in getting to where a rapid feedback loop is attainable?
Yeah, that comes, with a lot of trust, and a lot of organization, right? You cannot just wing it, and you also don't want to fail fast and fail many times for the same reason. If you're not learning, and if you're making the same mistakes again and again, then you're really not using the proper culture of DevSecOps. So the couple of pieces that really are critical and foundational to the success of a DevSecOps team is that baked in security, and that's why we call it DevSecOps. Because if you also don't have a high degree of testing, and that's why Google does 150 plus millions of tests a day on their software. That's because by having emulation and simulation with these tests, and they can do regression testing and make sure they don't break features. So don't create a dangerous or disastrous experience to the end user by making changes too fast, and now you're breaking existing features that people want to use and enjoy, and you're not making your software worse than it is. And so by having this high test coverage and really having that automated testing, all the way from unit testing to integration testing to end-to-end testing, you now can trust that the change you're making is not going to break things. That's the first step. Once you have that settled, really, if you have the right DevSecOps team, and that's really tough to do, and that's why we're bringing Platform One, which is the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps team today, as a managed service. So teams that are building software don't have to go and reinvent the wheel when it comes to building a DevSecOps stack. That is changing the way we think of automation, and embracing that culture shift left, where people will be doing more and more testing, more and more cyber every day. It's not an afterthought. It's not once a year. It's not every 6 months. You're not compounding that technical debt and have to address it once a year. If you can fix your software and your cyber findings every day, multiple times a day, your software becomes more and more secure. But more importantly, we have a very strong cyber stack, right? So we bring a lot of the most advanced cyber capabilities with continuous monitoring and zero trust and all the cool stuff we do to make sure that you're not just bringing malicious software or cyber risks into your environment. You can detect things that are malicious. And look, people think of cyber assessment as a once a year thing, and in a world where your vendors and partners and dependencies are updating their software sometimes 20, 50, 100 times a day, doing a scan once a year brings zero value, right? And so if you cannot have this automated and continuous and rapidly react to events, whether it's a 0 day, whether it's having to update your software, and being able to move fast at doing so centrally, and assessing software centrally and updating it centrally so it spreads across your teams, you just cannot keep up. And I can tell you, right, any team, and when I used to have my own investment, I would obviously look at different things to see which company am I going to invest next, right? But today, if I have to put my investor hat back on, I would tell you, I would probably 90% be focused on the quality of the DevSecOps team within an enterprise, because if they don't have a DevSecOps team, I can tell you they will never be able to compete. And based on the maturity level of that team, they will be able to react to change and event, or just get behind. And that's going to be now what's going to define what's a successful company.
Okay, so I was going to go there with leveraging the experience as an entrepreneur, a very young one. I don't want to sidestep that, because I think that journey is amazing, and that inspiration, and it molded you as to who you are. For you to say the quality of a DevSecOps team and the maturity in the government, where we do a lot of outsourcing, and there is a modus operandi, if you will, of federal leadership supported by integrator community systems developers, the reskilling, retaining, and recruiting of feds in a world that's automated. Nick, you see it. It's part of the president's management agenda: data accountability, IT modernization, 21st century workforce. There is a feeling that, well, the government just outsources that. So how do you build that culture so that the federal employee feels part of that mature, qualified team of DevSecOps, and maybe use your DoD example of how you build that camaraderie with industry?
Yeah, first, we cannot succeed without industry, but we also cannot succeed without proper oversight by federal people and technical oversight, not just acquisition oversight. And so, when I think of the engagement we have, one is we need to really do better at training our people, government people, when it comes to architecture, cloud native architecture. So really, architects are going to be foundational. Program manager and true agile program manager, acquisition professionals that understand agile end to end, not water agile fall. And so that piece of training and continuous learning, we are enabling with learning hubs virtually, so people can go and spend time every day, multiple times a day. It is not a once, every 2 months or every year, and I spend 2 weeks somewhere and I learn stuff. It's continuous because the pace of IT has never been so crazy. Some of the tech stuff we use at Platform One is barely 2 years old, and yet it's foundational to the success of the team. So you can imagine 2 years is nothing, and yet it is everywhere within the Platform One stack. And then back to your point on the contractor side and the defense industrial base and all the partners, both startups and larger companies. I think we have to stop the integration mindset that just doesn't work. We need to have a unified team between government and contractors in the same DevSecOps environment, ideally provided as a GFE environment with an ATO, and we call it continuous ATO in DoD, so it's continuously able to produce software. And if that centralized environment becomes the default playing grounds and development grounds and testing grounds and production environment of these teams, then we have a success at moving fast. Because if you have subs using different tools and then the prime integrating all the work and then throwing it over the fence to the government to do some testing and cyber scanning, that is just not going to succeed anymore. We cannot afford these bottlenecks, and so that shift left and migration to the same GFE centralized environment is a must. And we're mandating quite a few teams, GBSD, all the nuclear work that we do on the ground at the Air Force is the first team that mandated its prime and subs to use a GFE Platform One DevSecOps environment across all classification levels. And that's going to be saving us a lot of time and money.
Okay, so this is where my stream of consciousness is kicking in and my neurons are firing, because I would like to address how having that cloud native background, the zero trust, again, your journey as an entrepreneur and bringing products to market and commercializing technology obviously takes understanding a landscape. And in a world that is we're cloud smart in government, we work with integrators, we spend $90 billion a year thereabouts, right, on IT support and services. You mentioned Platform One. Can you share or dispel a myth, Nick? Because I get this question a lot. Pete, is it open source versus proprietary? How do they commingle? How do you address that? It's not one or the other, but it's a sort of a combination of best of breed. How do you address that myth? Because I think it's a myth. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, no, it's not. First, you will not find a single piece of commercial software that does not have open source bits in it. So I can tell you that right there. So there's no such thing as not using open source, or you cannot keep up with the pace of relevance anyway. So that's number one. Number two, it's all about trust but verify. And no matter what kind of software you're getting, if it's commercial or open source, you want to have eyes on code. If you can get eyes on code, you want to scan, you want to see the quality of the software. But it's even more, I guess, it's easier on an open source stack because you can see the code, you can see who is contributing, you can even push back patches upstream. I believe Platform One is the largest open source stack in the DoD. We open source our entire code base, all the automation, all the containers, everything we do with Kubernetes, all the cyber stack we talked about, zero trust, everything is open source back, and anyone can come in and contribute back and have that two-way street. What people don't realize is, one, obfuscation doesn't really work, and I can prove that in a second. We did an event 2 years ago, in one of those big cyber conferences that you all very well know, and we brought, some DoD technology that supposedly no one ever touched and as seen before to these hackers that do this for a living. And within 4 minutes, they were root access on the box, even though it's GOTS, right? It's not open source, it's not commercial, it's something that's supposed to be completely unknown. 4 minutes it took, and I think 20 minutes in, we had like 20 people in. So that tells you that obfuscation and the unknown, supposedly, of the benefit of not knowing the stuff and makes you more secure is the myth. It's a lie. It's just a better way to get locked into less vendors, less options, and completely being dependent on these companies to update the software. And by the way, they can't keep up, so you get behind. The reason why a company like SpaceX is able to move so fast, and you can ask the team, and I have a great relationship with SpaceX because we exchange a lot of data and information on their team and how they are so successful. And by the way, they have 200 developers to do the 11 platforms of SpaceX, including the boat that catches the rocket back, and we have 4,000 just on F-35. Okay, 4,000 developers at for F-35, and they have 200 total for all 11 platforms of SpaceX. That's just something that you need to understand, right? It's meaningful data here, right? And efficiency matters, right? And timeliness matters. And the only reason why they're so successful, I mean, they'll tell you, is because their stack does not rely on any of the space stuff. It's all based on open source. They do not get locked in any way. They use Linux with real-time patches. So it's really open architecture. It's easy for them to find tools and update the stack. And when there's new cool stuff, guess what? They benefit from that because the first thing that is going to be supported, all these massively widely used environments, all the new stuff coming out, all companies are going to try to provide it to these kind of systems first because it's widely used in industry. The minute you start in government special stuff, the minute you're going to get behind for everything you're going to be using down the road. And so that doesn't work. And so the critical piece of timeliness is often misunderstood. Because people think, oh, you're going to move fast, you're going to create more risk. It's becoming the opposite. If you cannot move fast and react to events in 0 days and patch your software fast in seconds, not hours, not days, I'm talking seconds, you put yourself more at risk. And with open source, you have eyes on code. You can see who's contributing. Doesn't mean you just, go widely and take stuff left and right. Platform One has a centralized team that's centrally assessing and accrediting commercial and open source software. So we centrally understand bill of dependencies, where the software is coming from, who is contributing. We centrally look at dependencies of dependencies. So, often you're going to pull one piece of software, but really you're pulling 50 bits of open source capabilities left and right, right? So you need to understand what's in there, and you need to really have eyes on code.
So Platform One, how instrumental is that? Is it outside of DoD? Is it becoming a opportunity for other federal agencies to leverage all the hard work that's put into it? And is industry also leveraging as a model? I mean, talk a little bit, shout out to Platform One, of course, and the team behind it, but how are you seeing that impact? And you had something to do with it, right? Oh, yeah, there we go. Smokey, there we go. Platform One. Yeah, I was going to say, man, your position pretty, I guarantee. Yeah, okay. There'll be some comments on, wow, did he know?
It's on purpose. I own it.
Okay, all good.
It wasn't an accident.
That's all good.
I do nothing by accident. But,
I love it. No, but shout out. Plug for Platform One. I mean, it's a thing. It's real. How is it being leveraged? Can it be leveraged? What can people do to become involved with or utilize this platform to do a lot of the great work that you've experienced at DoD?
Yeah, first, it's really designed to be an open architecture and open source capability. And we have already about 12 agencies outside of DoD consuming pieces of Platform One at different level of maturity, right? Not everyone is going to be able to use every bits and pieces, but look, the key is to have that two-way street. Right now, I have to be honest, it's mostly a one-way street. People consume the stuff we build, and that's fine. I like to see it where they bring back, value too, and we grow better, faster, better together. and it's going to get there, just a matter of time. We already have a few teams in DoD at least that start to contribute both ways, so that's great. We have, DHS, VA, IRS, I mean, you name it, the IC, many teams starting to look at pieces of Platform One and services of Platform One, contract vehicles, but more importantly, commercial companies too. Both, and what's interesting here, it is both DoD, related, defense industrial based companies like the big primes and the subs starting to either want to be on Platform One and push their software to Platform One, but also we have companies on the financial institutions, healthcare, just using Platform One as well. So that's a great way to partner, and they really are pretty. I have to say, for once, the DoD is leading the pack, I would say, when it comes to zero trust and Kubernetes and the stuff we do with the service mesh and stuff like that. So it's pretty exciting to see. But what's even more exciting is I see companies that used to be service, work for hire companies like the big primes turn into product companies because they have a lot of IP, and they can take these and containerize pieces of their software and then provide these containers on the Iron Bank, which is our container repo at Platform One, where any company out there, and that's really something people should know, can push their capability as a container that can be added into the repo and the marketplace, so we can buy licenses of it. But also we accredit it all the way to the highest specification levels. And so for a startup, they can get started within few days, weeks, be fully accredited, and have their delivery mechanism to push updates in real time, multiple times a day, as often as they need, to the DoD, and we spread it across all classification levels, and they have a contract vehicle to sell their licenses in a matter of days. So startups can be onboarded in days. No need to wait, no need to go struggle with contract vehicles and all that kind of stuff. But more importantly, you have these big primes turning from a service company, which, as the return on investment or the valuation of these companies when you do work for hire is a very small multiple of the revenue when you're a service company. When you're a product, though, and you become a product and your revenue is product recurring revenue driven, your multiples can be 30, 40, 50x. I mean, that's how you get the real crazy valuations out there. So we're making these service companies able to become product companies by containerizing the existing IP and then licensing that IP as Lego blocks that can be reused across the department and by really anybody. And that literally makes them a product company.
Yep. I mean, Nick, I'm hearing this in my walkabout in government. I spend a good bit of my time with the national labs, and tech transfer and commercialization is so critical, right? There's $140 billion, as I like to constantly stress, that's out there that is coming into the government, pushed back out through grants and so forth, priming the pump for entrepreneurs, whether it's through SBIRs, to come and contribute. And to hear you talk about, how the integrator community is evolving into that commercialization entity with product, enabling startups, the containerized component, which I'd like you to kind of just quickly touch on, because your knowledge of cybersecurity and cloud and containers is so important for folks to understand. It's not that complex. You're stressing a great point, and this is how that innovation ecosystem that we try to stress every time, whether it's a bipartisan topic, the government does its part, it's fueling innovation and whatever mechanisms out there. But I think that I know that you just made it a good point with Platform One and your efforts, and clearly shaped by your entrepreneurial spirit. There is a way to be open, if you are open to modernizing how we can accelerate that open innovation ecosystem. So shout out to you. And that's a great point to hear, that the 12 agencies alone, and I'm sure there'll be more, utilizing some of that expertise. Can you just speak to that, the cloud world we're in, cyber, physical security, you name it, the risk mitigation component? What do you think the 1, 2, or 3 key components of don't be fearful of open source, because it actually provides a secure environment for folks to develop and innovate?
Yeah. So first, when it comes to open source, you have to do it right, like anything, right? You can have a lot of risk if you do open source wrong, but I can tell you, you have the same risk if you do commercial software wrong, and there's a lot of risk all over the place. So the Zero Trust Foundation is ready to assess pretty much every piece of your stack as something you do not trust, and you want to have layers of security, and you want to reduce the attack surface. You want to reduce the ability of a bad actor to remain in the system, to laterally move in across the system. So we have a lot of key pieces as part of Kubernetes and containers that help us do that. One is zero trust. So zero trust, what it means is you have strong identities for each container. So container A, we know it's container A, it's not container Z, using certificates. And then container B, to be talking to each other, needs to be whitelisted. So by default, there's no traffic flowing, and you need to whitelist the traffic for A to talk to B. What that means is if someone gets into container A, they kind of laterally move across the entire stack and start to find all your crown jewels. They can only talk to the few containers that are allowed. So you reduce what we call the attack surface of lateral movement of the bad actor across the system. That's piece number one. Piece number two, and that's tied to the behavior detection that we use using machine learning and AI. If a bad actor managed to get into one of the containers, it's going to start typing commands that the container has never typed before, and we're going to proactively kill the container because there's going to be a drift of behavior. And so that also reduces the ability of the bad actor to remain in the system or escalate privileges or do stuff within the system. And that's the beauty of containers, right? Because when you add what we call fat VMs, right? So VMs that do a lot of different things, the behavior is so big that you could do a lot of things before you detect it. When a container is very small and is focused on doing something very specific, by definition, you're going to be able to detect the drift of behavior very quickly because it's only supposed to be doing a few things. And the minute it starts doing other things, you have a problem. On top of that, everything we do is using the infrastructure as code and GitOps model. So that means that everything is in code. No one connects to SSH and type commands and start making changes in production. It's all in code, going through the pipeline and going through the checks and the test and the validation of multiple set of eyes approval. So you reduce insider threat by having multiple set of eyes approving the code change and passing the test, passing the staging, all that kind of stuff. But then everything is code. So you can easily compare your runtime state with your source code. And if there's differences, you have a problem because there should be no difference between your source code, desired state, and your runtime in production because it should be exactly the same. So by having these kind of cyber principles, and if you tie this back to what we call moving target defense, which is we treat the entire stack as cattle, not as pets. What that means is we can kill the entire environment, the containers as often as we want and bring it back to immutable state. So the bad actor will not be able to be remaining inside the system. And so the more you treat your stack as cattle and you're able to rapidly turn it off, bring it back up with a push button deployment, do hard upgrades with no downtime, thanks to Kubernetes routing capabilities and load balancing capabilities, you don't impact your production workload. You can scale up and down based on the traffic and both your compute and memory needs. So you pay for what you consume. So you're saving taxpayer money there. So it's so much value, right, where you start compounding it into a platform like Platform One.
Yeah, we're going to move into our parting shot in a minute here, but I have to bring it back to your entrepreneurial DNA. I mean, Nick, first of all, again, it's such an honor to interview you. You're clearly a technologist, a software badass, a DevSecOps genius. These are my terms. You're a father, you're a husband. Congrats on doing that family thing. And I know that's near and dear to you. If I can, before we move into parting shot, just ask you, this journey that started in France, that has you in the United States Air Force as the chief software officer. And yes, you're collaborating with DHS and you came over in cyber.gov and your passion is infectious. It is obvious. And again, I think, can you just speak to when you reflect on maybe when you're sitting there with your wife saying, how did this happen? because it's a journey that I could tell every day you bring it. You've mentioned you stay on top of current trends, and whether it's AI, machine learning, zero trust, cloud first, there's a lot, containers. I mean, just alone in open source, dispelling myths. When you reflect, what are your feeling good moments about you're making a difference, man? And this isn't don't feel like it's about bragging. It's just, it's an amazing journey. 15 years, founded 12 companies, 180 innovative software projects, 45 Fortune 500 companies have touched Nick Chaillan. What makes you go, I must be doing something right?
I don't know. So, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. The last 2 years have been pretty exciting. I have seen and witnessed things that I'm like, that might actually stick even after I'm gone. I have a couple of examples where teams did great things without any involvement from me, and yet did it exactly like I would have done it, right? And you're like, wow, wait, you changed. I never even talked to these people, and yet they use everything I do, and they ran and they did great, and look, it just worked perfectly, and they're in the news, and people assume I was involved, but I wasn't involved. It's great. That was the best moment, right? And I also helped remove so many impediments to our great airmen. That's probably what I'm most proud about, removing a lot of the bottlenecks, a lot of the nonsense, a lot of the toxicity, a lot of the silos, and showing that, hey, and that's why I was really insisting to remain a DoD-wide engagement with Platform One, not just for the Air Force, but for all of DoD, because first I never understood the differences between Navy and Army, Air Force. I'm like, well, are we not all together against others instead of fighting with each other? So I never really understood that, but I can tell you the community of practice, 15,000, 1,400 people, so many 60 plus DoD programs working with Platform One. That's really a dream come true, because really it is, the silos of DoD, how complex it is to partner, even though we all say we want to try to do it. A lot of people let egos get in the way, or, different reasons, different mindsets. But I'm so excited to see how vast this became, and that's very exciting.
So first of all, I get it. Silos. Somebody said to me once at one of these charm school conference places I went to, which was awesome, was cylinders of excellence, removing bottlenecks. So yeah. I get it. I appreciate that. I do have one more question, because I think this is where putting on your being a Greek Nostradamus hat, 1, 3, 5 years out, right? Time horizons. Just truly what you think. The world's changing, technology underpins the sectors that you've identified, whether defense, industrial base, energy, transportation, and then again, its impact on society, our human life, right? Our acts of God occur all over the world, tsunamis, earthquakes, and that's when we realize how our infrastructure needs to become more resilient. What excites Nick about the future, whether it's DevSecOps or one of these solutions, that you think there's hope for a more resilient world underpinned by technology?
Well, obviously, AI, machine learning, deep learning is going to be pretty scary. I can tell you, we're at a point where it does things we don't even understand. We benefit from the outcome, but we don't really understand how it got there. I mean, just 2 days ago, it solved some mathematical equation that I don't understand, and we don't even understand how it got there, right? That's scary because we don't control or understand the process. So you could lose control of that very quickly, particularly in a military use case. So that's something to pay attention to. But it's also probably the best way to get to things we don't understand faster. But when I look also at the future, it's all going to be about continuous learning. Technology is changing so fast. The next IT professionals, if they're not able to reinvent themselves multiple times every couple of years and do a self-learning without having to have someone holding their hands, because that someone will be behind himself or herself, and you will not just never be able to keep up. And that's used not to be the case. So that's going to reduce the number of people that can do this job.
Well, I think that was, I mean, I just wrote that one down, and we're going to move into the parting shot, which is my favorite part. This is the Nick. What do you want to leave with the audience? I think the reinvent oneself and the continuous learning just echoes in the world that I lived and now live. So with that, the platform, pun intended, is yours in 30 seconds or less. Give everybody here a parting shot of what you think symbolizes your passion, your respect for humanity, and then just having that entrepreneurial spirit that you are representative of.
Well, the first thing I would say is never listen to people when they tell you you cannot do something or you shouldn't look at different things. I would probably not be where I am today if I listened to anybody. So that's number one, is always push for your dreams. And having a French guy in the Pentagon, I mean, if you had to bet on the chances, I would say it's probably 0.00001% chances, right? I don't know another one at my level. And yeah, it's doable. And I made changes on different things that people said when I started, don't even look into it. It's going to be impossible to change this. It's been there for 20 years. Just don't listen to that kind of mindset, because that's exactly where you get stuck in time and irrelevant. And that's how you end up being obsolete, and you don't matter at that point. So always take a step back, fight for what you believe, work hard. I don't count my hours, I don't count my time. Still prioritize your family, because they can disappear tomorrow, who knows. But you have to find the right balance. But I know for me, when I look at the 20 years of work, not a lot of vacations and a lot of work, that's for sure.
Well, thank you, thank you. My parting shot, and just what you stated resonates with me, folks. Nick represents credibility. He's an influencer. He stresses curiosity. He's authentic. And most importantly, he's humble. I know you're out to do what you have to do to achieve the greater good, Nick. The government, the world needs more Nick Chaillans. I am just, again, thankful for this opportunity and grateful to have had some time with you. We will be seeing and speaking again. You have so much to offer society, but thank you for being a part of the Dots and Bridges family.
Thanks for having me.
You bet, pal.